Hello, everyone. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my experience with you of what we did during the coronavirus period here in 2020 in Haikou. Um, my name is David Chon, and I am a Korean American from New York. I was born in Korea, but grew up in the States. And I was educated there, and I've been working in New York area for a very long time. Um, I have my family members are all still back in the States, and I have three children, and my youngest child, he was born in year 2000, and he is currently a second year student at Berklee College of Music. And the reason why I'm sharing that with you is that he's probably a very similar age as most of you. Um, and also, as far as education is concerned, I went to Columbia University, and that's where I got my bachelor's degree in economics. And I also got my MBA at Columbia Business School. And I've been working in New York for a very long time. I worked at an investment bank, worked at a hedge fund, worked at a private equity fund. I was a CEO of a very large asset management company, and started many companies, asset management companies, prior to moving to Hainan about 3 years ago. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what I've been doing in Hainan. I'm here as an investor. I wanted to invest in businesses here in Hainan and possibly in the mainland in China. 3.5 years ago, I started a Western-style restaurant called the Chimac at Mission Hills Resort area. And about a year ago, I started a second store here in Haikou, Gomao. Same store, but basically focusing on Western food and focusing on Western style service. Our clientele has been mostly foreign community and many foreigners, they know us. But of late, we've been reaching out to the Chinese community, and more we're having more Chinese customers visiting our store. And the reason why I'm mentioning about Chimac is that it is the platform that I use to do a lot of community work here so far this year. And so I wanted you to get a good sense as to what the business was, and then what is the sort of the nature of the business. Now, moving on to the main topic of the day, which is the community initiative. So to discuss this, we have to sort of go back about a month and think about the Spring Festival time period. Between January 24th and January 26th, both of our stores were closed for the Spring Festival. And it was during that time period when the serious alarms started going off here in Hainan about what's happening with the coronavirus. And a lot of people started to panic, and there were a lot of false news that was going around. But by and large, everybody was scared. Everybody was scared what was happening in Wuhan, but at the same time, everybody was scared here because not knowing and not having all the facts, and the fact that it was Spring Festival and everything was closed at that time added to this fear. And in order to do anything in this kind of environment, I needed to understand the nature of coronavirus. How deadly it is, how it is transmitted, and how we individuals can prevent catching the virus. So I spent 2 days during the Spring Festival doing a lot of research on coronavirus. It's amazing what you could find online. You could pretty much get everything you want. It's probably too much information, but I did spend some time analyzing it. I won't go through the details, but I'm going to share with you the conclusion that I came to in late January regarding this virus from the perspective of Hainan and Haikou. So if you wear masks and if you wash your hands regularly, the chances of you catching the virus is lower than you getting hit by a falling coconut while walking down the street here in Haikou. So it was manageable, especially if you paid attention to wearing masks and washing hands. But at the onset of the virus outbreak, there was a lot of false rumor and false knowledge that was spreading. To give you one example, I have this mask here. There's a proper way to wear masks, and this is outside and this part is inside. But I saw people wearing this outside in, and also people were wearing it not covering their nose, and people were wearing it not pinching their nose part. Why? Because they never had to wear it, and but they wanted to wear something because people said it was necessary, but they just did not know. So at that time, what I decided to do was I wanted to do something. Instead of sitting at home, quarantined and being scared, I wanted to actually do something that we could do to help the community. So after doing the research about the virus, I wasn't so scared anymore. But there was a wide spectrum of people's view on this virus. On the one hand, there were some people saying, it's nothing. I don't need to worry about anything. And on the other hand, there were some people thinking that as soon as they step outside their door, they will die from the virus. So it's in that kind of sort of very bipolar, extreme sentiment that I wanted to do something that actually could help people to understand, number one, and number two, manage this situation better. So me and my friend decided to do something during the Spring Festival. We actually went out and bought 6,000 masks. It was very hard to find, but miraculously we did find it. And I wanted to distribute this freely to people in need of masks during the Spring Festival. But the main objective was not really to distribute the masks, because we were only giving out 2 per person, and it was going to last them just a couple of days. But what we wanted to do is, along with distribution of masks, tell people what's the proper way to wear the mask, and what they need to do in terms of washing their hands with alcohol-based soap to reduce their risk of transmitting and catching virus. So we wanted to do this, and we wanted to do this quickly. So we basically secured the supply of masks, because that was a very important thing to do. And the next thing that we did was to define the audience. And how do we define the audience? We said we're not going to do any special promotion. We were going to just distribute it to people who were walking by and seeing the sign and stopping. It was very random, but we figured there was enough people interested in this event where they will come and partake in the event. And another thing that I did was to really think critically about what my capacity is. What do I need to do to make this event successful? And third is to assess the need of the recipients. Do they really need this? If they do, then I think the reception will be warm. If they don't really need it, then it'll be a nuisance for these people. And then I wanted to get leverage on this idea. And what I mean by that is, how do I make this bigger than what it actually is, or how much bigger than what I can do as an individual by myself? And also, as I stated earlier, to have a very, very clear-cut objective. Without this, what you will end up doing is any idea to help people is a good idea in this kind of environment. So how do you say no to a good idea? And so you really needed to have simple, clearly defined objectives, and stick to the objectives in coming up with the strategy, and allocating resources for that objective, for reaching those objectives. So in a very simple project, it was a very simple project, but at the same time, these are the elements that I think you really need to focus on to pull off a successful community initiative or community activity. One is have a clear-cut objective. The simpler it is, the better. And have a defined audience. Who are you trying to address? And also identify the need of the audience. Do they need this now? Do they need this later? Do they need this in electronic form, or do they need physical supply of something? Do they need this in Chinese? Do they need this in English? These are some of the questions that you need to ask to really tackle the needs of the individuals who are receiving. And also identify what you as an individual is capable of doing. What are your boundaries, and what's the role that you need to play in order to make this successful? And also finally the leverage aspect. If you're gonna do same amount of work, how do you make it bigger? And to give you an example, when I used to be a hedge fund manager, we used to do a lot of research all around the world to analyze investment opportunity. Same amount of research goes into whether you're buying 100 shares or you're buying 100 million shares. So if you really want to leverage your research idea, you really want to sort of be investing in bigger pool of money. That way, same idea could result in much bigger return than having a smaller investment pool to play with. So that's the leverage aspect that I'm talking about. How do you get your idea and make it bigger and make it much more transparent and clear? I think that's a very important concept to think about. I'm going to go through each one of those items and use this project as an example so that you could get a clear understanding of what I'm talking about in terms of what are the critical components that you need to do a successful community initiative. As I said, objective, clearly defining it. Simpler it is, the better. I'm going to give you one example. So I'm giving out free masks to people when people are in desperate need of masks. I could have easily put a basket on top of the table and say, I'm taking donations to help people in Wuhan. I'm pretty sure a lot of people would have made donations as they were receiving masks, because at that time, even if you had money, you couldn't really buy masks. So that's a good idea. Help people in Wuhan and take donations. That's a very good idea. But we did not do that simply because it took away from the objective. The objective was to educate the people, not to help people in Wuhan. So we didn't want to dilute our main objective. And second of all, we didn't have time to do proper research on which organization that we would donate the money to and how much money we need to raise to have a meaningful impact on our donation. So if donating for Wuhan was an objective, I would sell those masks at 10 kwai a piece and tell people to overpay so that we could donate more to Wuhan. So see how the change, so different objectives of the project can change the nature of the project and each component that drives the project. So you need to have a clear, simple objective. And in our case, we didn't do the donation. We just said, here's a mask, but you have to listen to how we tell you what's the proper way to wear the mask so that you could learn and you could teach your family members. So our objective was so we had 6,000 masks, 2 per person. We're handing it out to 3,000 individuals. We assumed that those individuals had friends or close friends or family members, maybe 4 or 5. So in a way, we wanted to reach out to maybe 15,000 to 20,000 people by distributing masks to them. So that was our objective, and we stuck to it. And defining the audience. Why is this important? Well, if we are 100% targeting foreigners, we need all English-speaking volunteers. We need all the printed material to be in English so that they understand. So I wouldn't tell a foreigner how to wear mask properly with the Chinese text. So defining the audience also allocated our resource and defined what kind of resources that we needed. For this project, we assumed that it was going to be 90% Chinese and 10% foreigners. So that was the sort of how we defined the audience. And what my role for this project, I said, okay, number one, I needed to find 6,000 masks during the Spring Festival when all the stores were closed. So that was my job. And I think someone upstairs was helping us because I was able to find it. It was a little bit pricey, but I was able to find it and secure it so we could conduct this project. And the second thing I needed to do was to distill all the knowledge that I gather from doing the research, make it into simple language so that when I collected volunteers in a very short time period, I could educate the volunteers so they themselves could interact with the people who are actually receiving the masks. So one thing that I did was to put together one-page bullet points on the message that we want to give to the individuals receiving the masks. And I had both English version and Chinese version prepared. So my job was to secure the mask. Without it, there's no free mask event. Second of all, find the volunteers. And I was able to find close to 12 to 14 volunteers, half of them Chinese speaking and the other half English speaking. And then arm the volunteers with the message that they wanted to give to the recipients of the free masks. So I defined my role to those tasks, and then I stuck to those tasks. And identifying the need. To give an example, it was late January when everything was closed and no one could find any masks anywhere. That was the prime time to be distributing masks because I think people would pay attention to what we have to say. If we said, okay, we're going to wait 1 month to do mask distribution, so if we're doing mask distribution today, we may get some reception, but it won't be as useful because now everybody know how to wear masks properly, and the supply of masks is more abundant. So when and who and how and why, all these things from the perspective of the recipients, the need of the recipients had to be analyzed and incorporated into the strategy. And the leverage is this. If I did this myself, and let's say it took 1 minute to distribute one mask and explain the proper usage properly, then I would need 10 hours to distribute 600 masks. It would take me really long time to distribute the masks. So what I needed volunteers. And also strategically, I said, you know what, we're going to do one distribution center in Gomao and another one in Haidiandao. Why? Because we thought Gomao at the time was a little more commercial than residential, whereas Haidiandao I thought was much more residential. So we wanted to make sure there was 2 points of distribution and sufficient number of volunteers to cover those distribution centers. So the leverage part comes in for this project with the volunteers. Because we had lots of volunteers, we were actually able to distribute the entire 6,000 masks in one day. If it was just me, I'd be probably still distributing it somewhere in Goma corner. So I made sure everybody came early. I made the training information very simple, so it's not rocket science for them. And I gave them material so that they're properly armed, so that they don't need to memorize the whole thing initially. Towards the end of the day, everybody memorized the whole thing they needed to say. But they had a script in front of them, and everybody had a copy, both in English and Chinese, and everybody was doing their job very properly. And another thing that was really nice, and this is sort of a side note, is that when you are distributing something that's for free, when people are in desperate need, people are usually very thankful. So you get a lot of positive feeling and positive energy back from the recipients of these free masks. So volunteers, it was cold, rainy day, but volunteers were smiling the whole time, and they were very happy, and they said it was a very rewarding experience. Why? Because the needs were there, and we were filling those needs. So when you design the project really well, along with the sacrifice of the volunteers and sacrifice of the leverage of the leveraging the project with a lot of volunteers, people do, at the end of the day, do get positive reinforcement for their sacrifice and for their time, which makes the projects that much more worthwhile to do. And so the strategy aspect of all this is that I incorporated timing. I said timing is now, not later. Later, you don't need this event. Marketing, I said, you know what, this should not be a Chimac event. So on the poster that we prepare for the event, there's no mention of Chimac. And in fact, there's no Chimac logo anywhere in the whole distribution scheme. I just wanted this for when people were receiving it, as a good gesture of someone. They wanted to make sure you got free masks, and then you heard how to properly wear the masks. And the culture. So, you know, one day flash event project, why do you need the culture? Well, in order to leverage what I want through the volunteers, volunteers have to know and feel what I'm thinking and what I believe, so that they could transmit that aspect of the whole project to the end recipients. And to me, this was culture was that, okay, it was very simple. Out of generosity of someone, they spent their own money out of their pocket, bought 6,000 masks, and they were giving it away for free. And the volunteers themselves were the agents where they were giving good stuff freely to the recipients. So the culture was that here is a distribution that was being done freely because of the generosity of us. That culture was designed purposely by me so that we could have a successful event, and the volunteers themselves could get very positive reward feedback from the recipients. And the last thing that was very important in terms of strategy here was that that we did this with a very positive attitude among the volunteers. It was, like I said earlier, it was a little bit cold and a little bit rainy day, but everybody was out there drinking hot tea, but with a positive energy. And the positive energy is important because, so if someone says, here's a free mask, versus here's a free mask for you, and these are the things that you need to do to properly wear them. And if you allow me, I will show you how to properly wear the mask. So two different types of messages were being sent out. One is very passive, and the other is very active and engaging. And you wanted to make sure, as part of your strategy, what aspect of your project needs to be very active and positively engaging. So that sort of summed up our free mask campaign. It was a very long-winded description of a very simple project. But at the same time, what I wanted to make sure you understood are the following components. I'm going to review it one more time. Clear objective. Simpler it is, the better. Defining the audience. Why? Because by defining, you could target and you could change and you could have a laser-focused strategy. And defining the organizer's role. So what is your role? What do you need to do? You can't do everything. What are you going to do? Where are you going to spend your time and allocate your resource? And another thing is identifying the need of the recipients. Who are they? What do they need? When do they need it? Why do they need it? And to leverage. If it's a good idea, don't stop with just one person. Make sure you have an army of people who could represent your culture and your idea to more people so that you could have a bigger project. And lastly, how do you incorporate everything into actual action plan? You need a strategy. And that requires a little bit of time, a little bit of thinking. So it's one of those cases where more you think about the project before you actually do, the higher the probability of success of the project. I know some of you got some WeChat stories regarding what we did and how we spent our time. So some of you received our WeChat story, which is like our diary of what we did during the virus vacation that we had in 2020 so far. I mentioned about the free mask event, but we also did a lot of other activities. We did home cooking contest for people where it was a virtual contest. People submitted their dishes they were cooking at home, and we had group chat voting of the dishes. And every week there was a winner, and over 50 people or close to 50 people voted every week, and we had maybe 12 submissions of dishes. And we'll could share some pictures of this with you. But this was to help people with their boredom. After about 2 weeks of resting at home, people were going a little bit stir crazy sitting at home. So we wanted to help people, and we had a lot of other activities. And the last activity that I should mention is that we had our 1-year anniversary of Wechat Store during the shutdown period. So what I did was, in order to celebrate our 1-year anniversary, I wanted to do something nice for the community, and I identified the students who were Hainan University students who were stuck in their dorms on campus for a very long period. I wanted to send them some free food to have, and partner up with the Hainan University to make this project possible. And this time, unlike the free mask, our name had to be visible for the project because it was my store that was making the food and distributing the food. In any case, any successful project, how small it is, it requires a lot of research, a lot of thinking, a lot of critical strategy formation. And like I said earlier, more you can do to prepare, the higher likelihood of success. And another thing, last thing that I wanted to talk to you about is defining success. Sometimes success is immediate. Sometimes success is you planting a seed and that could germinate and grow into a big tree 30, 40 years down the road. So you have to, along with the objective of the project, you have to define the the benchmark on how you will make a success of the project. I hope this is not too confusing for you, and I hope there's an opportunity for us to meet in person and then have a Q&A discussion at some point when we're free to move. But meanwhile, it's been an honor and it's been a lot of fun sharing with you some of the experience that we had over the past month or so here in Haikou in 2020. Good luck, everybody. Bye.